let's talk to RJ in Colorado. RJ, hello, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. So basically, my argument was that if you look at man-made structures, the oldest tree and human demographics, all of them point to a young Earth versus the evolutionist viewpoint.
Okay.
How you guys
yeah, let's jump in with the caveat here that I am not a biologist, and as smart and accomplished as Dr. Darrell Ray is, I do not believe biology and evolution are his forte. We will try to talk about this in an informed way, but also I would encourage, I will make the case here that you need to be ready to offer an alternative, because I guarantee you our line of questioning is going to end up being, okay, why do we care and what are you trying to convince us of outside of this claim about evolution? So we'll let you make your case first, and then we'll dive in. So go for it.
Okay. Well, the man-made structures I'll start off with, most of them they center around, now not all of them are in the Middle East, but a lot of them are. And the other ones that aren't kind of center close to the Middle East, like in Egypt, you have the pyramids, and I know Egypt's in Africa, but it is close to the Middle East. And then the society that came afterwards was Greece, and that is also somewhat close to the Middle East. I realize that that's considered part of Europe, but they all kind of center around that Eastern area. And, if you listen to the Bible story, that's where Noah, after the flood, first he landed in Mount Ararat, or the mountains of Ararat, I guess, and that's in modern-day Turkey, Syria, around that area.
Okay, so let's break that down first. Yeah. That's an interesting place to start. So thank you for running through that. So I've got a couple comments here. First off, do you know the concept of the Fertile Crescent and the cradle of humanity and civilization, kind of that terminology?
I think I'm a little familiar with that, yeah.
Yeah, so what you're espousing here is kind of common knowledge among people who even, do accept evolution to be true. So I'm not really hearing a opportunity to refute evolution in this statement. I know that it sounds like it might also back up your claim, which is why I want to jump into you believe that the Noah story really happened, that there was a flood and only Noah and his family and a bunch of animals survived it?
Yeah, well, and the fish in the ocean, yeah.
All right, well, leaving the fish in the ocean for now, because that has problems. So my question is, if we're going literally here and saying there's a literal creation in 6 days, I'm assuming, and then a literal flood, and then literally 3 sons, their wives, Noah and his wife, were the ones to repopulate the earth, how do you reconcile how long it would take for that amount of people to create the number of civilizations that we're talking about here in that short a span of time?
Are you talking about all the way up until today's time? Or
well, no, you're saying, okay, there are ancient structures here, the pyramids in Egypt and, these various cities, these various ruins. Those would need to be constructed by people and within a certain amount of time from 6 people. Correct. So have you done the math there?
I think the story goes it was 8 people.
Okay, 8 people.
So right.
So,
but the thing is, they had kids. They possibly could have had kids while they were on the ark.
Did they say that?
And they had, what's up?
Okay. Still, we're reaching, so once a population hits a certain point, it's really, really hard for them to come back from extinction. And 8 people with or without kids involved doesn't meet that threshold.
Okay. Well, I'd have to disagree with you on that. I think they had. I mean, I'm just guessing. It doesn't specifically say it, but I would assume. Well, it does say that they had kids. It says, they had like 10. I mean, I don't know the exact number. I think it's like 24 kids after they came off the ark. And
RJ,
back then they didn't have Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What do you do with the Chinese civilization that's older than the flood, or what do you do with the Central American civilizations that were well underway before the flood, among other things? What do you do with all those people? Millions and millions of people we know. Where'd they come from?
I haven't heard of the Central American civilization being older than the flood. I have heard cases made about the Chinese being older than the flood, but
of course they are. They're far older than the flood.
Well, Sumer, some people refer to it as Sumeria. The Sumerian society, by most archaeologists, believe that that's older than the Chinese society.
Sumer and Sumeria are two different things, significantly different.
So Sumer.
Yeah. So what I'm asking you is, can you, if I were to say, would you go online or wherever you go to get your information and get some peer-reviewed sources from archaeological studies, and could you make a case? You're not making a case to me because you're not citing any sources.
Right.
You're not an archaeologist. You're not an evolutionary biologist. Oh. Evolution is not even the issue here. The evolution is not the issue. Human habitation on this planet is the issue that goes way, way back before any flood.
Well, and see, there's a reason I have an issue with that, because if you do believe in evolution and that we're around 200,000 years, that would mean that it took us like 190,000 years to figure out how to make a man-made structure. I mean, I did do research. I mean, I used Google. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And it does say Turkey has the oldest man-made structure, and it's about 8,000 years old.
Oh, no. Göbekli Tepe is over 12,000 years old. Over 12,000. Göbekli Tepe itself, far older than what you're talking about.
The thing is that is closer to the creation versus evolution, which is 200 or 300,000 years ago.
Well, let's get back to your original question. You made a statement about human habitation, and you haven't even been able to back that up. We don't even need to go to evolution yet, because you can't establish why there's a civilization that's over 12 to 14,000 years old. That's how old Göbekli Tepe is.
They use the carbon dating method, which has a lot of flaws in it.
Oh, no.
Even if it's...
So do you know how carbon dating works, RJ? Do you even know basic physics? Have you had a course in physics?
Physics? No, I have not. I'll be honest.
You need to go study a little bit about physics, because you do respect the atom bomb, I'm guessing. You do believe that there is such a thing as an atom bomb, right?
Of course.
Okay, so if you can understand that there's an atom bomb that takes advantage of the energy within the atom to create massive amounts of energy to blow up, if you understand that, and then you understand that there's ways to look at atoms that allow us to identify how old something is. We could actually go to Hiroshima, for example, take some of the radioactivity that still exists there and identify exactly or very close to when the bomb went off, even if we didn't know there was a bomb that went off there, because there's a decomposition of atomic structures, and that's all carbon dating is. It's a decomposition. And when you say problems, can you tell me what the problems are? Because you're not a physicist. You don't even know how carbon dating works.
Yeah, the living snails that were carbon dated they're carbon dated 12,000 years old. There was a carbon dating that said living snails were over 12,000 years old. That means that there's a problem with that system.
It means that perhaps the point was that they were using the system in a way that wasn't meant to be used. You can say, I can't cook, I can't make a fire with this hammer, therefore hammers don't work. You're using it wrong.
I mean, it's not a foolproof system.
Where's your source for this so-called finding, and how does that say anything?
The living snails. I mean, you can find it online. They tried to say it had something to do with limestone, because there was limestone inside inside the shells. But yep. There's a lot of flaws. I mean, human technology has a flawed way of dating things. It's not always correct.
So human technology is flawed and isn't always correct, but your guesses about anthropological structures are for me, RJ, the problem I'm having here is you call in, you don't cite sources, you say you found it on Google, and yes, valid sources can be found on Google, but if you're making an argument to people and want to convince them, you need to have those actual sources, and you need to make sure you're getting your facts straight. And so far, you've been giving out names, you've been giving out dates that are not right, they're not accurate. And so that's decreasing your credibility a little bit more than it already was. So we're having a little bit of trouble being convinced by this argument. I believe you're convinced by it, but if the point's to convince us, then we might want to change tactics here, or at least have you call back with some actual sources.
Okay. Well, I didn't write down all the sources. I did. I mean, I suppose I could, but I don't think it's necessary.
Why not?
I mean, the other thing is, well,
why is it not necessary to cite your sources?
I suppose I can, but I mean, I was going to go into the other topic too, and that was the human population.
Okay, you've already demonstrated that you don't understand how human population and demographics work if you think that 8 people could repopulate the earth in a couple thousands of years.
Yeah, if you do it on a calculator and even if you times it by 2 over the course of 2,000 years, you get way more than even 8 billion people. So to say that we're older than 200,000 years that's just crazy, in my opinion.
Wait, how did you do this on a calculator? I'm so curious. Keeping in mind that people have, how did this work?
Okay. Well, I did it. I calculated if everyone from 6,000 years ago, if you take 8 people and you times that by 2 every 30 years, I think it's more than enough. It comes up to more than 8 billion people within 2,000 years, actually earlier. And that could explain, the wars, the plagues. I mean, and I would say there was no contraception maybe there was back then. People had a lot more kids than they do now.
Yeah, and a lot of them died.
And yeah, that's true. I mean, there was famine, plague.
Well, wait a minute. You made a huge assumption, and that's you're going to double it every generation. Where'd you get that information? How do you know that's an accurate calculation?
Well, I mean, I don't see if they're having if you have 8 kids per couple, right? Even if half of them die, you're still doubling every generation.
But you're not looking the actual reproductive rate of humans. There's almost no population on the earth that's doing that. No, nowhere. You don't double.
Would you agree? I guess, would you agree that people had more kids in the earlier times versus now?
They had more kids because the likelihood of all of them reaching adulthood was very small. You had to pop out 8 kids if you wanted to keep 2.
Are you familiar with Thomas Malthus? Have you ever read Thomas Malthus' book on population? It's about a 250-year-old book. You may not have heard of it.
I haven't.
Well, it's a very important book if you want to understand how population works. But let's just be real simple about it. How many pups does a dog have every time it reproduces?
I think if I remember right, it's about 4 the first time that they have kids.
Okay, well, there you go. Let's just say the dog had 4 pups. If you look at dogs, why aren't dogs overruling the world? Because they reproduce a lot more than we do.
There is actually a lot more dogs today than there were 100 or 200 years ago. A lot more.
That's not my question. You espouse that doubling every generation. You just told me dogs don't just double, they quadruple every generation. So why aren't we overrun with dogs?
We kind of are. We have a lot of dogs in the Humane Society right now, and humans are smarter than dogs. Humans are the smartest mammal on the planet, so they have a longer likelihood of living. And, what's that?
RJ, I think you need to go back to school and study a little bit of math, study a little bit of biology. The amount of knowledge you're lacking here is astounding. And the main thing is population dynamics do not work the way you're saying at all. Nowhere close. Humans might reproduce at 1.2 times per generation, and that's under the best of circumstances.
I'd have to disagree with you on that.
I don't care if you agree or disagree. You don't have diddly squat for evidence, so it doesn't matter what your opinion is. It's not based in anything on fact.
I would say it is. I mean, I disagree, but
RJ, this is why it's useful to cite sources.
One thing I can't wrap my head around, though, is do you really think that we were around for 190,000 years and we didn't make a man-made structure, or we didn't, our population didn't get up to 10 million? Do you really think it took us that long to come up with a lot of these things? Do you think human beings, the writing system dates back to 5,000 years, and that's in Sumer.
So RJ,
it took 190,000 years?
RJ, I want to answer your question with a question. Do you think you're the first person to think of this? Do you think that all of those scientists who dedicate their lives to this have somehow overlooked this? Or do you think that maybe you are not quite understanding what's going on here?
I do think they have overlooking it quite a bit. I do.
You realize that there are some pretty standard assumptions across countries, across continents, where scientists will come to these same conclusions. Do you think that this is a worldwide method knowledge here?
That's an argument from authority. That's the same argument that...
No, it's not an argument from authority. An argument from authority is only an argument from authority if they're not actually an authority on the subject.
So the majority of Christians rule the world, but they're all wrong. But the scientists who are not the majority of the world are the correct ones, even though there's a lot of scientists that disagree with the scientists you're referring to.
Okay, so first of all, Christians aren't the majority. Muslims are actually. But my point here is that either you think that all of the scientists are wrong and you have somehow come up with something that has been completely overlooked across the entire globe, or I'm suspecting, do you think there might be some kind of conspiracy happening here where everybody's agreed to lie about it for some reason? Like, either you think that the entirety of the scientific demographic is illiterate and incompetent, or you think there's part of a giant conspiracy. And both of those seem very far-fetched to me, especially if you're the one saying, well, it's just common sense.
I mean, I suppose you could make that argument, but I do think they overlook a lot of things. They've made lots of mistakes in the past.
How did we come up?
Scientists
how did we realize we made mistakes?
Have you ever made mistakes, RJ?
No, here's my point, RJ. How did people figure out that scientific mistakes were made? Through science.
I would say evidence and testing things and evidence.
Right, so science. Science figures out when science makes a mistake. Not guesses,
I would say
not holy books.
Snails. The living snails was a mistake, though, right?
I'm going to have to look that up. But I would suggest that you do some looking up, too. And something I would suggest you look at is Viced Rhino's channel. So that's VICED. Rhino, RHINO. He does a lot of coverage of exactly this kind of thing. He is a lot more knowledgeable about sources and the science behind it than we are. Also, if you think you've got something that completely rattles the entire scientific community to its core, I'm confused why you're coming to a show that explicitly says we're not scientists instead of going to actual scientists and presenting this, because you could get a fucking Nobel Prize, dude. Like if you bring this up and realize that the entire scientific community has been mistaken for the entirety of its existence, you're going to get some pretty awesome cred. So I suggest maybe moving in that direction next time. They will ask for sources, though. So they're warned.
Okay. You were asking for evidence, all right? And that's, you know, you guys are asking for evidence. And then when a creationist presents evidence.
Ooh, wait. Evidence for what? What are we asking evidence for? God? Because we did not even touch that.
Yeah.
That is a whole other topic.
Yeah, God, yes.
Okay. Well, next time, call in and talk about God, because that's not what you did today. Even if evolution were proven false, the Christian God would still need to be proven. They are not the only options here. So,
what are the other options? If let's say for some weird reason I'm right, and the world is less than 7,000 years old, what other option could there possibly be?
Well, the Norse believe that the giant stone dwarves farted us into existence, or something like that. So why not that one?
And the Hindus believe it's millions and billions of years old. So that's another alternative.
The creationist myth makes more sense than that. And I think
it makes more sense to you, RJ. It makes more sense because it's the one you were brought up with. It's the one that seems familiar. It's the one that feels like common sense because it was presented that way to you. But it's actually, if you look at it, not by far the most realistic one. So I'm going to let you go for now.
I would say it is.
We do have other people on the line. But if you want to call back either with actual sources or maybe to talk about God, which is something we didn't do today, feel free to call in again.
All right, I'll let you go. I know you got a lot more callers. I will say thanks for being respectful. I called Matt, and that guy just hangs up on people. I know you guys work together and stuff, but you guys have been a lot more respectful, and you listen to my argument, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for calling in. All right. Oh, thanks for coming in clutch there, Daryl. That was impressive. I like it.
My doctoral dissertation was actually on population issues.
Oh, so there we go.
I have a bit of expertise. It's kind of dated. I'm not going to say I'm up to speed on everything, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, when you're calling in about something, make sure you at least have a couple sources and a couple numbers that you know are right. Because if you don't have either of those, chances of convincing people are going to go down quite a bit.